Rediscovered Radio, Women's Voices, Women's Music from the WYSO archives is brought to you in part by the Levitt Pavilion in downtown Dayton. Building community through music, one free concert at a time.
Hope you're enjoying listening to Rediscovered Radio, Women's Voices, Women's Music in the WYSO archives as much as we're enjoying making it. Jocelyn Robinson here. I'm a producer and preservationist at WYSO, and with my co-host Juliet Frumholt, WYSO's music director, we've got another bonus episode for you. Back in 2023, I visited with Suzanne Hopkins. You might remember her as Suzanne Edmondson or Suzanne Thomas, formerly of the legendary local band the Hotmud Family, among other musical projects. If you recall, our second episode features women in roots and bluegrass music, and many of the folks we heard from admire Suzanne as a singer, musician, and mentor. After long musical careers, she and husband Gary Hopkins, Hotmud's former bass player, both found another calling as pastors in the United Methodist Church. But as you'll hear, Suzanne's still very much engaged with the wider world. She welcomed me into their home in southern Ohio on a rainy spring afternoon, and man, it was a great conversation. I'm so glad I get to share it with y'all. So, before I get started, I had something I wanted to play for you. Gary's not on this recording, but thought it would be fun for you to hear a couple of things that we've produced at WYSO that have the Hotmud family. So the first thing I'm going to play is just a short excerpt of a performance that was done in the studio.
Okay. Gosh, you can hear everything. The mix is so good. Whoa.
Hold that thought.
Let's play it faster now. I just wanted to say that the other people who are playing tonight, along with Fiddler and Van Kidwell, are Dave Edmondson and Rick Good and Suzanne Edmondson are all playing. They're the Hotmud Family, and what's this fella's name over here? Greg Dirth is a fiddle player for the Hagen Brothers, and they're playing behind Van Buren Kidwell tonight. Van is from Richmond, Kentucky, originally.
Is that Dan?
Living in Miamisburg, Ohio.
Dan Duffy? Is that Dan Duffy?
Play a little.
Could be. Could be.
Or Tom? No, it's not Tom.
It's not Tom.
What year was this?
It will all be revealed.
Okay. Because I noticed we don't have a bass player yet.
Nope. So what I'm going to play for you now is a clip of that same session, but it was produced into what we did 5 years ago, were these sonic birthday cards for WYSO's 60th birthday, which we just celebrated our 65th.
Oh, cool.
But Nina Ellis and I produced these little gems. So I'm going to play that for you. And as I said, it will all be revealed.
Okay.
In the 1970s, local programs were flowering at WYSO. Antioch College students, WYSO staff members, and community volunteers collaborated to make programs then as now. And live local music was also a defining part of what made WYSO WYSO. Here's a recording of the Hotmud Family, familiar to WYSO listeners and music lovers all over the country back then. They had their start in the late 60s as folkies, but went deep into bluegrass and old-time music as well. Here they are in 1974, Suzanne and Dave Edmondson, and Rick Good, with guest fiddlers Van Kidwell and Greg Durth.
Okay, it was right before we got Harley Campbell.
The Hotmud Family with Van Kidwell and Greg Durth in 1974 from the WYSO archives in a recording that was engineered by Randy Tom, who went on to become the head of sound design for Lucasfilm at Skywalker Sound in California.
Wow.
With, so far, 2 Academy Awards and 15 nominations.
Wow.
Look him up. Randy Tom, T-H-O-M. I'm WYSO General Manager Nina Ellis.
How cool is that?
Isn't that fun?
That is fun. That's great.
So if you listen to that whole session, I mean, you can hear fingers on the strings,
Yeah,
on the
you
the
can hear
frets.
everything.
You can hear it. The clarity
It's so
is
live.
amazing. It's
Yeah,
just amazing.
It's really something.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Cool.
So I wanted to bring that along just to
glad you
share
did.
it with you and to let you know that those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do with the WYSO archives to be able to produce little spots like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
This podcast that we're working on, where we're really looking at women that are women and music in the WYSO
Right.
archives.
Yeah.
And I'm the one charged with working on our bluegrass edition, essentially,
Okay.
which is really kind of fun. We're looking at the Wednesday night jamboree because we do have quite a bit of tape from that. And also, talking to, as I said, talking to Linda and Tom,
Yeah.
and really bringing the Dixie Darlings into it, and a few others, and that was one of the things that we wanted to do, is kind of look at the experience of women musicians back in the day, because we're talking about that was 1974.
Yeah,
that's the
that's
year
50 years ago.
That's the year I graduated from high school.
That's 49 years. Yeah, I mean, that shocks the heck out of me to realize that was that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do have some
Shocks me to still be alive.
I do have some with that you're singing, and I didn't have the wherewithal to pull that in time, but I will make sure that you have access to some of that so
Okay.
that you can take that trip down memory lane.
Yeah. Well, actually, what kind of started the Wednesday night jamboree was the Tuesday night jam, and that was at the Living Arts Center, also where the Wednesday night jamboree broadcast from, and the Hotmud family had gotten a grant, a government grant, to present music in the Dayton public schools, and part of that grant dealt with community outreach kinds of things. So we partnered with the Living Arts Center to start a Tuesday night jam session that brought musicians from all over. That's where we met Linda and Tom. That's where the Corn Drinkers was born, was at those Tuesday night jam sessions. And I think that might even be where probably Tom and Linda met then, because Linda and Bunny were playing fiddles, and they were coming, hanging out with us and bringing their fiddles to the Tuesday night jam session.
That's Barb Coons.
Barb Coons, yeah. And then around the same time, we started the radio show at the same time, and that was the next night at the Living Arts Center. And shortly thereafter, we started traveling nationally and started running into lots of other musicians and forming relationships with them. And a lot of them, as they were coming through town, we would book them for the radio show. So we got to have a lot of traveling musicians that were coming through Dayton. So that just was a lucky thing that happened.
That is way cool. That is so cool.
Way cool. It was way cool.
So let me ask you a couple questions here. When did you start playing music? Let's go back to the origin story here a little bit.
Oh, I probably was singing when I was born. I started playing piano when I was 5. And that was my first experience with playing music. My brother got a tenor guitar when I was about 14. And my brother is not musical. He's a music lover, but he's not musical. Although his grandson, my great nephew, is a professional musician. So we've had a professional musician. My father was a professional musician. So we have had a professional working musician in our family without interruption for over 100 years. My father started playing professionally when he was 15, and that was in 1923. So we've had a working musician in my family for 100 years. So I started playing piano when I was 5, and I picked up my brother's tenor guitar when I was about 14, just fooled around with that. And then when I was about 17, when I was a senior in high school, I started thinking, I bet I could play music and sing. So folk music was coming along. That was the folk scare. So I got involved in the folk scare and became a folk singer and went on the road when I was like 18.
So what year was that?
1963.
So how did you make that transition into bluegrass and old-time music?
I've heard it all my life. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. It's inescapable. And I had people, my father played big band jazz, but other people in my family were interested in, played country music in their houses and stuff, and family members and stuff. So I've always heard it. There was never a time that I don't remember hearing like the Carter Family, or Jimmy Rogers or people like that. So I've always heard all kinds of music.
Is there a particular artist or a particular song that you can think of that back then was really sort of inspirational for you?
Bonnie Lou singing "He Taught Me to Yodel" on the Midwestern Hayride. I started yodeling when I was about 9 or 10 because I saw that on the TV and I was totally lost. That was it. It's Bonnie Lou yodeling on the Midwestern Hayride. That was it for me.
I remember Midwestern Hayride.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was probably and Wanda Jackson, and then Wanda Jackson singing, what was it? "If Our Love's the Real Thing, Where's My Wedding Ring?" I was a big Wanda Jackson fan when I was a little kid, and Patsy Cline. But also my big musical love when I was a kid was Billie Holiday. I wanted to be Billie Holiday. I mean, I thought she was the best singer I ever heard. She just really spoke to me. Billie Holiday. And then I heard, other people. Margot, some of the opera singers that used to be on Ed Sullivan, I thought those people were, people getting up and singing in front of people, I thought was a real natural, amazing, cool kind of thing to do. So I've always wanted to be a singer.
I know that your voice and your singing has inspired a lot of people. I'm just going to tell you, I've done a couple interviews in preparation for this episode, and when I ask people what their inspirations are and who they look to as someone to aspire to, your name always comes up.
Seriously, that amazes me. That amazes me. Because I never thought of myself as like so say, you're one of the bluegrass divas, and I said, I'm not a bluegrass diva. I'm a journeyman musician. And I've always thought of myself as a journeyman musician, like a utility infielder.
Well, I was talking to Kathy Eastep yesterday, and she told me that, Suzanne can sing anything. She could, she sings the bluegrass and she sings the old country music, but she can sing anything.
I can't sing anything. I can hardly sing at all anymore, because I'm a million years old and I've got allergies. But back when I sang all the time, there were a lot of kinds of things I just can't sing. If I stay in my wheelhouse, I was pretty good. If I could, but I had a little zone that I could work in. I was a pretty limited singer, I always thought. So, but I meant well, and I was into it, So.
Let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, so what was it like to be a woman musician and singer back in the day? One of the things that we're looking at in this project is the different experience that women musicians actually have had.
Well, there would be some places where there would be no ladies' room. That was a challenge. that would have accommodations for the gentlemen in the bands and things, but wouldn't have any accommodations for ladies in the bands because there weren't any. One of the things that came out of being a woman musician back in the day was that virtually all the other women that I ran into, rather than becoming rivals, we became friends and shored each other up. Excuse me. So I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be really special.
Yeah, like Martha Adcock and Lynn Morris and Rhonda Vincent and other women, and Jenny Cleland, who was one of the people in the Highwood String Band. The other women and the Whites, Sharon and Cheryl White, and other women that you'd run into, there weren't very many. So, you'd sort of like, oh, look, there's, and sort of glom onto each other and had really good relationships with other women. I know that's real common in like the California bluegrass scene, but once east of the Rockies, it was a different kind of thing. There weren't that many bands with women in them. I know that happened a lot in California, but not so much in the eastern regions.
Tell me a little bit more about the era that the Living Arts Center played such a pivotal role in. Tell me a little bit about what the music scene was like and how it changed things.
I really don't know, because I didn't go to, there were some venues around town where they used to have bluegrass jams all the time. What was that bar? Was that the Mermaid? Where they had like a Sunday afternoon bluegrass jam, and there were places, Bill's Donut Shop over in Centerville, they had a bluegrass jam there. There were bluegrass jams in various places, but we didn't really go to them. There weren't a lot of local festivals. Then about the time we started traveling, they started having local bluegrass festival. Todd's Fork was the first local one that I can really remember, and Painter's Creek, yeah. Couple bluegrass festivals. And bluegrass festivals, though, were just getting started back then. So there weren't as many venues, there were just starting to be venues where that was played. And there were a lot of musicians around. So the Living Arts Center was part of the Dayton public school system, I think. And that's where we got our grant to do our work. So that's why we ended up at the Living Arts Center. And George Zimmerman, who was the director of music, was the architect of all of this. If it hadn't been for George Zimmerman, there would have been no Wednesday night jamboree or any of that. That just wouldn't have happened. So I owe great homage to him for that. He was just, amazing. So that got started. The Tuesday and Wednesday thing really started the music scene that's what created the music scene at the Living Arts Center.
How big were the crowds? Tell me what a
typical
typical Wednesday night would look like.
How would we have? A couple hundred people. I mean, we had a live audience, and it went out live on the radio, and it was always packed. They had an auditorium in there, held a couple hundred people, because it used to be a school. It was that Orville Wright School? It was, well, whatever. The Living Arts Center used to be a school. So they had the school auditorium, and it held a couple hundred people. So it was always full. Yeah, we had a full house every Wednesday night.
And what were the years? What was the time span for that?
Probably started in 1972, 73. Yeah, that school year. So I'm not sure what month it started. And I know we pulled out, but I don't remember what year, maybe 1980, 79. We were traveling so much that we couldn't be there. That was during a time of, we were just really, really busy. We were on the road almost all the time. And we said, we're not doing this justice. And we turned it over to somebody, I think. But that sort of like fades out into that's 50 years ago. So,
well, my next question is really, to ask you about Hotmud's relationship with WYSO. How did that get started, and what was that like?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. It was pretty organic, I think. It wasn't. Some of us used to live in Yellow Springs and already had some sort of relationship with WYSO. And they had this show on the Rising and the Rooster Crows. What year did that start?
I want to say 73 because I think that Tom was still in high school.
Yeah, so Rise When the Rooster Crows had started, and so it just sort of natural. I think it was pretty, like I said, organic. I think that just sort of happened, but then we approached them about doing the radio show, and that was an instant yes.
So tell me what it was like to perform live on the air then.
Oh, performing for me was the most natural thing in the world. So I just was always real excited about it. I thought it was performing live on the radio. I thought was the most fun ever. Yeah, I loved performing. I thought performing was the most fun ever. Really, more fun than anything. It's just I'm to this day more comfortable on a stage than in a conversation on a couch.
Well, you're doing okay.
But you know what I mean. That's I'm a pastor now, and I love preaching. And it isn't that I like being the center of attention. It's that I like sharing a message. And for me, that's the point, has always been the point. The point of singing, the point of performing is to share a message, is to communicate, and hopefully get a dialogue. So that's preaching to me as an outgrowth of being on stage for 40 years.
Well, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in a minute, but what's your favorite memory of that relationship with WYSO, that time, either performing on the air or up in the studios, or I know you did things for fundraisers and all kinds of other things for WYSO. Tell me about your favorite memories.
One of my favorite memories from WYSO is when we did the Hotmud reunion in 2010 and got to do a fundraiser. It was during the fundraiser for WYSO. So that's one of my favorite WYSO memories was that night that we broadcast that from Canal Street, that reunion. I always really liked being part of the fundraising thing because I'm one of those few people that always loved the fundraising marathons on the radio. I would specifically tune in. I would listen more avidly to that than almost anything else. I just loved hearing people call in, and I'm really a passionate believer in public radio, in public media, and so that to me was always just really exciting. Was when that I said, oh great, people say, oh no, it's going to be fundraising week. I never was crazy about sweeps week, but I always liked fundraising weeks. So some of my favorite memories of my WYSO memories are based around fundraising. And the neat thing about the Wednesday night jamboree was that you would hear stuff on there that you're not going to hear anyplace else. You'd hear some local artists that were on all the time that would never have a stage, a platform. And that to me was exciting, putting people in a position where they can shine is always been a sort of I like that as a motivation for me to do something, is to try to showcase people's talents. So actually my fondest performance memories of WYSO are things like that. I'm sorry if that's vague.
No, not at all.
I've
not
gotten
at
vague in my old age.
Tell me about your favorite songs. What do you love to perform, or what did you love to perform back then?
I loved, and to this day love, Jimmie Rodgers songs. Those are my favorite songs to perform. They have great lyrics. They have great tunes. Many have yodeling, which I can still yodel. So, many of those songs have yodeling in them, and I love yodeling. And they were just great songs that you could wrap your voice around. And they all always seem to have like this really nice point to get across. You know, I like songs like that. I don't do much secular music anymore at all. It's just my head someplace else, and where I want to be is someplace else. There's a lot of songs that I used to sing and really like that I no longer approve of. So, you know, I have become a different person than the person who wrote those songs. Even I have some songs that I've written that I won't sing anymore because I don't approve of them. Which that probably sounds crazy, but you know.
No, I think we all evolve. We all grow and mature and change, and you know, when you get the privilege of living a long life, you know, that change is, I think, a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to stay the same. You know, I'm going to be somebody different tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. You can't stop. I mean, just because say, well, I'm an adult now. I'm an old person. Well, I was 78 in January. I'm not going to stop trying to learn or trying to evolve or trying to stay in the world. I think it's really important to try to stay in the world. You know, to be informed about what's going on, not just with politics or economics or anything like that, but with culture, what's going on with culture, including pop culture and including kids. I have a lot of faith in kids. A lot of faith in the gen, whatever gen they are at this point. I have a lot of faith in those kids.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Who are some of your favorite fellow performers?
Oh, I have too numerous to mention. Almost. You know, lots of bands I always loved. I haven't listened to much contemporary bluegrass music lately. I've been listening to classical music and jazz for the past couple of years, so that's mainly what I'm listening to. But I know Kathy Kallick's she's still out there fighting the good fight, and she's one of my favorite singers, and I know Joe Mullins is. I don't know that they're performing as much, but Joe Mullins is doing some pretty good things to try to keep traditional music alive. But I mean, as far as favorite performers, Alison Krauss. I mean, I still think she's one of the best singers I've ever heard in my life. She's a wonderful singer. But as far as contemporary, what's going on in bluegrass music right now, I haven't really. I'm ashamed to say I haven't really kept up because I've been busy.
Well, that kind of takes me to talking about life after Hotmud in a nutshell, because it's been a while, actually.
Well, yeah, and I did a lot of stuff after that too. I was in a country rock band, which I absolutely loved. I finally had a job for which my wardrobe was appropriate, because I'd always had wild clothes when the Hotmud Family was performing. I had a fairly eclectic and flashy wild wardrobe, and it was really good for the rock band, that stuff. And then I had a duo with Carol Elizabeth Jones called the Kentucky Warblers that I also really loved. That was wonderful performing. And then I spent like 10 years in the Dry Branch Fire Squad after Hotmud. And after I left the Dry Branch Fire Squad, I did some solo work. I did solo gigs after that. Did Augusta for several years, the Augusta music program. I did that. I don't know. I must have done that for like 8 or 9 or 10 years. I did some touring as a solo performer, mostly out west. And then I got a day job, and then I got involved in church, and then my life started really changing, and I pretty much quit doing secular music.
Is it more traditional gospel music that you're doing, or contemporary Christian
contemporary
music?
Christian music. Yeah, I do more of that. Although some gospel music and bluegrass gospel music, or old time, really more old time gospel music than bluegrass, and not Southern. I like Southern gospel music. Remember I said there's some stuff I really can't sing? That's one of those things I really can't sing. Exactly. Barbershop too. That harmony just totally baffles me. It's so bizarre. It's not where my brain automatically goes. My brain has places that it goes harmonically, and barbershop isn't there. That's in a different county. I love it. Like, we just watched The Music Man a couple weeks ago. That's our favorite musical, and the barbershop quartet that is throughout that movie is just so amazing and so wonderful. Yeah. So, but I do mostly contemporary Christian music and some, but with an old time flair, with an old time twist onto it.
Thinking about women musicians today, how do you think it compares to, the experience that you had back in the day? What are their issues or
I don't really know, because I'm not in the music scene anymore. I don't know exactly what kinds of problems they're having, but I think the women musicians right now are just absolutely amazing. And not just the bluegrass ones, the pop music ones, and the women that are in gospel music, and just I think it's a better environment for women musicians now than it maybe has ever been. I think women musicians now have something that for the most part they did not have, regardless of how much money and fame and talent and acclaim they had. What they have now is power that they didn't used to have, and I think that's tremendous. I love seeing Taylor Swift out there kicking ass worldwide in a business sense. And, I love that. I absolutely love that. I love seeing Billie Eilish win. I love seeing these women. I love seeing the power that Beyonce has. I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's just the best thing ever. HER, oh my God. She's amazing. Yeah, so I think what women have now that they didn't used to have was power. And I hope they can hang on to it. I hope we can hang on to it. I think it's the coolest thing ever.
Okay, let me see what my editor wanted me to ask you here real quick. Okay, so my editor is not from around here.
Okay.
So he's asking, why does she think the Miami Valley was special in its music scene? So what was special about the Miami Valley as far as music goes? Maybe we can do a comparison.
I think probably it was because of all the Appalachian immigrants. That as far as the bluegrass music scene or the old time music scene. And there really wasn't an old-time music scene. There was a bluegrass music scene, but not really an old-time music scene. We were among the first people that actually tried to play old-time music instead of bluegrass music. So, but I think because of the at the time when we were doing our music program in the schools, one of the things in the grant, I remember in the grant that we wrote, was at the time, Dayton, Ohio was probably 60% white, 40% black. And of the 60% white, more than 60% of them were of Appalachian origin. And of the 40% black, almost all of them were of Appalachian origin. So there was a lot of Appalachian music in Dayton, that people either played or were familiar with. So, and it was an industrial city. People had jobs, so people could afford musical instruments. So I think a combination of demographics and economy. And also, a lot of Appalachian people play music. That was part of the culture. They played music. My mother's daddy played the guitar and the banjo, Everybody had a relative who played guitar or the banjo or the fiddle or, the French harp or a musical instrument or the pump organ or, my dad actually through a serendipitous event, saw a saxophone, a shiny saxophone. He was 15. In the window of a shop in downtown Piqua, Ohio, which was pronounced Piqua. He lived in Piqua at the time, and he saw this saxophone. He was 15. He saw this saxophone in the window and was just gone. It was like me with Bonnie Lou. I mean, that was it. But he had no money. And he looked down at his feet, and there was a crumpled up $5 bill laying on the sidewalk. And he picked up that money, and he went in there, and he bought that saxophone. Within a month, he had taught himself to read music. He had taught himself to play the saxophone, and he had a job in a band, and that was in 1923. So, and that's basically the Miami Valley area. But my parents were Appalachian transplants. Everybody's parents were Appalachian transplants. The neighborhood I lived in was kind of an Appalachian ghetto. You'd see everybody driving off on the weekend to go down home. Because where you lived was not home. Where they were from was home. That was down home. So every weekend you'd go down home to visit the ones who had not moved up. Yeah, that was kind of, so I think that was a lot of people's situation. And there's nothing like a little nostalgia to fuel bluegrass music. Little nostalgia. Look how many of the songs are about nostalgia and homesickness and stuff. So I think part of that, part of the fact, places, towns that had like a bluegrass scene, or like Boston or Detroit, were all places where Appalachians had moved for the economic reasons generally, and congregated. So I think that's probably why. And Miami Valley is one of those places. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the most special, but it's one of those, it's a great example of one of those kinds of communities where a music like that can thrive.
His other question was, what did it mean for your music community to have shows devoted to roots music on WYSO?
Oh, I think it was necessary. It was validating. That was the thing. It was validating to that community. And I think that was one of the most important things. I didn't know about that when I was a kid. I didn't listen to it. When I was a teenager, the music that the radio station and the DJ that I listened to was Gene By Golly Berry. And he played what was then called race music. And that was what I listened to. Big Mama Thornton and Ivory Joe Hunter and Little Willie John. And that was the music. That was what I listened to. I didn't listen to country music when I was a kid. I was listening to the Coasters and Laverne Baker. Those were my other influences. Where the Coasters to this day is my favorite vocal group. Oh, and we got to play they played at the Philadelphia Folk Festival one year that we were playing at the Philadelphia Folk Festival. So I was so excited because I got to see the Coasters there. I also got to see Bo Diddley live there, which was my heart. That was the music that I listened to a lot when I was a kid.
It's so interesting how those convergences in those industrial cities,
yes.
Of lots of different kinds of people from certain communities coming together,
yep.
and
Are
then
we
something
allowed to say
new.
Intersectionality anymore?
Oh gosh.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can edit that out. You can edit out the I word. But yeah, I mean it is. I hate that that's now a dirty word because it's such an important word in describing how stuff works and why the stuff that works actually works. I don't think there's anything that works that isn't basically intersectional.
Yeah. Anything else that you would like to add that you think might contribute to my investigation?
I think it's wonderful that you're doing this. Of course, I was telling Jocelyn, I'm obsessed with podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I listen to podcasts all the time. So So yeah, I'm really glad that this project is happening. And I think I'm hoping that when we were talking about women having power in music, I'm hoping that doesn't go the way of women losing their rights and everything else. You know, to say, well, women should just be decorative. Which only really works for the decorative ones, you know.
So I have one last question for you, and that is, how would you like to be remembered?
You mean in general? Just in general?
Yeah, in any way that you can think. Any way that you can imagine.
I would like to be remembered as a good person. I'm pretty simple. And especially at this point in my life, thinking about all the things that I thought I wanted to be remembered as, when it really comes down to it, I just want to be remembered as a good person. That's all. I just want to be remembered as a good person who hopefully tried to make somebody else's life better. Which sounds probably Pollyanna-ish, but I'm pretty Pollyanna-ish. I'm a very cheerful person.
Well, you know, you can do that through music. You can do that through your faith practice. You can do that in just being a good person.
All kinds of ways, yeah. And, you know, that's one of the things about having a simple aspiration like that, is that there's so many opportunities to try to find ways to do that. So you don't get bored. You know, if you start your day thinking, how can I make somebody else's day better today? You're not going to be bored. You're going to be busy trying to find a way to make somebody else's life better. So that's what I've learned by being an older person, is that the more you can simplify, the better it's going to be. Yeah, if you just sort of remove all this stuff. It's like being a sculptor, where you take a block of wood and you chip away everything that doesn't look like a horse, you know, or whatever.
Service above self.
Service above self, yeah. Yeah. And Gary's in the faith game too, you know. He's a prison chaplain, and a retired pastor, and now he's a prison chaplain. So that actually works for us. We found something finally after all the years of searching that actually works for us. And it turned out to be, you know, people that I knew 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So you're a what? You're a what? And then there's other ones that say, yeah, I can see that. I always thought you'd end up that way. So.
Well, that's a blessing too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really is. That's a blessing. And I feel like I'm really blessed. I'm a very blessed person. So.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, my brave lad, he sleeps in his faded coat of blue. In a lonely grave unknown lies the heart that beats so true. He fell faint and hungry among the vanquished brave, and they laid him cold and lonely within a nameless grave. Oh, he cried.
That's Suzanne Hopkins and the Hotmud Family taking us out with Faded Coat of Blue from the WYSO archives, recorded live at Jilly's nightclub in Dayton in April of 1981. You can find more music of the Hotmud Family at hotmudfamily.com, and of course in the WYSO archives at wyso.org. We're digitizing more historical content all the time, so check us out. And you can find Women's Voices, Women's Music in the WYSO archives wherever you get your podcasts. There's more Rediscovered Radio coming up soon, so stay close.
We may find you and know you among the good and true, where a robe of white is given for a faded coat of blue. should she come, for I fear she'll not know me among good and true when I meet her up in heaven in my faded coat of blue. No more the bugle calls the weary one, rest noble spirit in a grave unknown. We may find you and know you among the good and true, where a robe of white is given for a faded coat of blue. Oh, the long years have vanished, and though he comes no more, still my heart with startling beat with each footfall at my door. And I gaze on the hillside where he waved his last adieu, but no gallant lad I see in his faded coat of blue. No more the bugle calls the weary one, rest noble spirit in a grave unknown. We may find you and know you among the good and true, where a robe of white is given for a faded coat of blue. Thank you. Thank you.